what are the three types of biodiversity? Genetic diversity, species diversity and ecological diversity. What are the four equal quartet or four causes for the loss of biodiversity? Habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species invasion and co-extinction. Species confined to a specific region and not found anywhere else is defined as endemism. Sum total of species richness is called biosphere. Hello everyone, welcome back to the revision class of chapter 13 of 2nd PUC Biology, Biodiversity and Conservation. Myself B. Shobharani from the Department of Biology, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, the Temple of Excellence. So what am I going to discuss in this particular chapter? I think you can see the beautiful picture of this tiger. So we are talking about biodiversity and conservation. Conservation is nothing but protecting and the upliftment of the biodiversity. What is biodiversity? Then how do we define the word called biodiversity? It is a totality of genes, species and ecosystems in a region, or you can also call it as total species richness. So in this particular chapter, I am going to discuss about the important concepts that are important from the examination point of view. So the type of questions that were asked in the previous question papers regarding this particular chapter called biodiversity and conservation, I am going to discuss. Moving on to the flow chart. Biodiversity and its conservation. What are the different levels of biodiversity? The different levels of biodiversity was put across by Edward Wilson. So what are the three types of biodiversity? Genetic diversity, species diversity and ecological diversity. So they might ask, what does biodiversity and what are the levels of biodiversity? Already I defined biodiversity can be defined as what? Totality of genes, species and ecosystems in a region, or it can also be defined as what? Sum total of species richness. Who proposed the levels of biodiversity? It was Edward Wilson. And what are the three levels of biodiversity? Genetic diversity, species diversity and ecological diversity. Evil quartet. What do you mean by evil quartet? What are the four very important causes for biodiversity loss, which is put together called as evil quartet, or causes of loss of biodiversity? Four important causes is put together as evil quartet. What is it? Habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species invasion, or even you can call it as exotic species invasion, and co-extinction. So this is very important concept from examination point of view, which is asked for 2-marker question. Mention the evil quartet for the loss of biodiversity, namely habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species invasion and co-extinction. Moving on to the patterns of biodiversity. What are the patterns of biodiversity? We have latitudinal gradients and species area relationship. So as we all know that, what are the reasons for conserving biodiversity? We need to conserve and preserve the biodiversity, and because we are benefited in many ways by this beautiful biodiversity. It might be narrow utilitarian benefits or broadly utilitarian benefits, or it might be an ethical argument. Then, methods to conserve biodiversity. So there are two methods of conserving biodiversity. One is called in situ conservation. The other one is called ex situ conservation. What are all the things that come under in situ conservation? Protected area, that is biodiversity hotspots, biodiversity reserves, national parks and sacred groves. So ex situ conservation, that is protection of threatened species, gamete protection. It might be gene bank, seed bank, tissue culture, cryopreservation, botanical gardens, zoological gardens and wildlife safari parks. So this particular concept, the two very important methods of conservation of biodiversity is very important from examination point of view, namely the in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. Moving on to the type of questions that might be asked pertaining to this particular chapter called biodiversity and conservation, which has a weightage of 5 marks. Moving on to the first question, mention 4 evil quartet which cause depletion of biodiversity. Among vertebrates, which group of animals has the higher number in global biodiversity? Already I told you what are the 4 equal courted or 4 causes for the loss of biodiversity: habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species invasion, and co-extinction. This is a very important question from examination point of view. So these are the ones which are repeatedly asked in the previous question papers. That means to say that how important this concept is from the examination point of view. What is the other split question? Among vertebrates, which group of animals has the highest number of global biodiversity? The answer is fishes. Next, same thing I told you, mention 2 causes for the biodiversity: habitat loss and fragmentation, overexploitation, alien species invasion, and co-extinction. Next, what do you mean by endemism? Species confined to a specific region and not found anywhere else is defined as endemism. Next, alien species invasion caused decline or extinction of indigenous species. Justify the statement by giving 3 examples. This is also important. These are the type of questions that are repeatedly asked, and it means to say that this concept is very important from examination point of view. So alien species or exotic species invasion causes decline or extinction of indigenous species, that is a native species. Justify the statement by giving 3 examples. So one example is the Nile perch introduced into Lake Victoria in East Africa lead eventually to the extinction of an ecologically unique assemblage of more than 200 species of native African cichlid fish in the lake. So this is one example. Next, carrot grass, second example. Carrot grass, which is commonly called as Parthenium, then lantana and water hyacinth, which is called the terror of Bengal, called Eichhornia hyacinth or Eichhornia species. Next, third example, African catfish called Clarius gariepinus for aquaculture purposes is posing a threat to indigenous catfishes in our rivers. So these 3 examples are very important examples to justify the statement that alien species invasion or exotic species invasion causes the decline or extinction of indigenous species. Moving on to the next question, number 5. Name 2 species which became extinct due to overexploitation. This is also very important. What are the 2 examples? Number 1, Stella sea cow. Second one, passenger pigeon. So name 2 species which became extinct due to overexploitation. It is also one reason. Overexploitation is one such reason for the loss of biodiversity. What are the 2 very important species which have become extinct due to overexploitation? Stella sea cow and passenger pigeon. Next question, number 6. Give any 2 examples for sacred groves in India. I have given good number of examples. There was 2 examples. Kashi and Jaintia Hills in Meghalaya, Aravalli Hills of Rajasthan, Western Ghats of Karnataka, Sarguja and Chanda and Bastar areas of Madhya Pradesh. So you can give any 2 examples for sacred groves. Next, define endemism. Name any 2 regions of accelerated habitat loss in India. How do we define? Already I told, this is one such word which is very important. Phenomenon of a species being confined to a particular area and not found anywhere else is called as what? Endemic species. So name 2 regions, Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, Indo-Burma, and any 2 examples you can give. Either 1, that is Western Ghats and Sri Lanka, 2, Indo-Burma region, and 3, Himalaya. Next, same, I told you why I have repeated this question, because this is the one which is repeatedly asked, so that you'll be aware that these are the questions which are repeatedly asked. Invasion of alien animal species eliminates the native animal species. Give 2 examples. Nile perch introduced into Lake Victoria in East Africa led to the extinction of more than 200 species of cichlid fishes. Illegal introduction of African catfish called Clarius gariepinus for aquaculture, threat to the indigenous catfishes of our rivers. Which is the fish caught in South Africa in 1938, which was thought to be extinct? Coelacanth. Next, define biodiversity. Write any 2 types of biodiversity. So biodiversity can be defined as the varieties of all forms of life in the biosphere, or sum total of species richness is called bio. So either you can define it as the varieties of life forms in life, or the sum total of species richness, or can be defined as what? the totality of genes, the species and ecosystems in a region. So what are the 4 levels are there? That is genetic level, species level, ecological level, or that is the 3 levels of biodiversity which was put across by Edward Wilson. Genetic diversity, species diversity and ecological diversity. Next, name any 4 recent extinct organisms as per IUCN Red List. IUCN stands for what? International Union of Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So how do we define the word called IUCN? International Union of Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So IUCN Red List, what are the recent extinction? Dodo, that is from Mauritius. Quack, that is from Africa. Thylacine, the Tasmanian wolf-like. Then Stella sea cow, and 3 subspecies of tiger, Bali, Java and Caspian. This is very, very important question. So it is like a guarantee question for you all. So name any 4 recent extinct organisms as per IUCN Red List. Dodo from Mauritius, quack from Africa, then thylacine from Australia, Stella sea cow from Russia, 3 subspecies of tiger, Bali, Java and Caspian. Mention biodiversity hotspots in India, Western Ghats, Indo-Burma region and Himalayas. This is also important. Next, what is ex situ conservation? Mention 2 examples. So there are 2 types of conservation, ex situ conservation and in situ conservation. So they have asked what is ex situ conservation? Mention any 2 examples. So ex situ conservation means what? Threatened plants and animals are taken out from their natural habitat. In situ, they are taken care within the natural habitat. This is taken out from the natural habitat and placed in special setting where they can be protected and given special care, or protecting the threatened species of plant and animal outside its natural habitat under human care. So this definition is very important. Examples, what are the examples? They have asked 2 examples. Either you can write zoological park, or you can give botanical garden, wildlife safari and conservation of gamete by cryopreservation. Next, question number 14. How does fragmentation of large habitats due to human activities lead to population decline? So habitat loss and fragmentation. What do you mean by this? Most important cause driving animals and plants to extinct is what? Habitat loss and fragmentation. The tropical rainforest reduced to 6% from 14% of Earth land surface. All of us know Amazon forest, which is called the lungs of the planet, which is responsible for 20% of total oxygen in the atmosphere, right? But now it is cut and cleared because of cultivation of soya bean. So it is reduced now. The Amazonian rainforest, which is called the lungs of planet, is being cut and cleared for cultivating soya beans. So the degradation of many habitat by pollution is also threatening the loss of biodiversity. Large areas are broken into fragments also is the cause for biodiversity loss. So this is also important concept. Next, write 2 examples for loss of biodiversity due to alien species invasion. Alien species invasion are species which are translocated beyond its home range. When alien species are introduced unintentionally or deliberately for whatever purpose, some of them turn invasive and cause decline or extinction of India. For example, you take carrot grass or the parthenium or even the water hyacinth, which is commonly called as terror of Bengal. So they have become invasive and they are posing a threat to the indigenous species. So the Nile perch introduced into Lake Victoria in East Africa led eventually to the extinction of an ecologically unique assemblage of more than 200 species of cichlid fish in the lake. Parthenium, which is called the carrot grass, lantana and water hyacinth, pose a threat to the indigenous species. African catfish called Clarius garipinus for aquaculture purpose is posing a threat to the indigenous catfishes in our rivers. Next, what are sacred groves? Mention any 2 examples. So how do we define the word called sacred? Even this is important. As I said, this chapter has a weightage of 5 marks. In MCQs also you'll get multiple choice questions, or maybe in the fill in the blanks, or 2-marker question or 3-marker question. So sacred groves are defined as traditionally conserved patches of forest dedicated to a local deity, or sacred groves are forests and patches that have been untouched and undisturbed by the tribal people as part of their religious and cultural beliefs. So some of the examples are what? Kashi and Jaintia hills of Meghalaya, Aravalli hills of Rajasthan, Western Ghats of Karnataka, Chanda and Bastar areas of Madhya Pradesh. This is also important. Next, list out 2 effects of loss of biodiversity. That is, habitat loss and fragmentation will take place, and also over exploitation. Hope you all have understood the type of questions what I've discussed in this particular chapter called Biodiversity and Conservation, which is having a weightage of 5 marks. So this particular chapter, for example, particularly in the multiple choice questions and in the fill in the blanks, the concepts what you study in this particular chapter plays a very great role. Thank you.